Hello and welcome to the fifth video in our series on reading skills. This video will be looking at transition words. What are they? How are they used? And why are they so useful for when we're reading? Let's begin with a bit of text here. This tells us about transition words. Basically, transition words show us how the sentences are connected together. Not all sentences have transition words, and in the textbook there are actually very few. However, writers often use them to help us understand the flow of ideas in a piece of writing. So they help us understand what kind of sentence is coming next. Transition words are quite easy to find usually because they usually have a comma just after them. Not always, but a lot of the time. The following slides we're going to look at now are some examples of very common transition words. The first ones are for giving examples, and they're words like for example, for instance, namely, in other words. When you see that at the beginning of a sentence, you know this sentence is an example. The next set are words that show contrast or a different idea, a different opinion perhaps. Those are words like on the other hand, but, however, and at the same time. These are the most common words that you'll find in the Solutions textbook. The third kind are transition words that show the reader that the writer is going to add some information, and those words are like and, in addition to, furthermore, and also. So we know that these are just going to be sentences that add more detail. Other sentences show a kind of order or the timeline of events in a paragraph, and you might see words like after, before, then, once, next, first, second, finally, and so on. These are also very common to show us the sequence of events and what the writer wants us to tell us. Now, very small category next is comparisons, words like similarly and likewise. And that's to show that two ideas are the same. So you might have one sentence that says one thing, and the next sentence the writer wants to say, and this other thing is the same. So we'll use words that are comparisons. Other words we use just to add emphasis, to say this is important. And those are words like above all, indeed, in fact, really, and in addition again. Other sentences might have a transition word to show that these are just adding more information again, or details. Words like specifically, especially, in particular, and namely. And these words are also similar to the category we mentioned at the beginning. Now, if you want to show results, you'll use transition words like so that, thus, hence, and as a result. And these are clear signs in the writing of what you're reading to show that the results are going to be discussed in the sentence. Summarizing. Towards the end of a paragraph or an essay, you might find words like therefore, or finally, or in conclusion, and as a result. And these can also be signs or signals that the paragraph is coming to an end and the writer is going to tell you their opinion, or just to recap and repeat what they've already discussed in the piece of writing. Okay, so let's have a look at transition words in a paragraph and how I use them when I'm writing. As you can see, there's some different colored highlighting on the paragraph. We've got green, light blue, purple, yellow, and dark blue. The transition words that I used shows first that I say where my ideas start to begin with. So this is where my ideas to support the topic and main idea start. The topic is equal pay for equal work, and the main idea is it's well known because of two things: sexual discrimination and the gender pay gap. So you can imagine I'm going to talk about two things in this paragraph. The first thing is sexual discrimination, and the second thing is the gender pay gap. And there we go. To begin with, I start with a sentence about sexual discrimination. And the next sentence, which is light blue, has a transition word. For example, it tells us the next sentence is an example of why sexual discrimination is a serious issue. And if you're going to read this, you'll see that I'm talking about stereotypes and how stereotypes of the role of women has led women to being discouraged from careers in Japanese companies. And the result of this stereotype, the purple highlight, the result of this is women are paid less than men. And this situation of getting paid less than men based on sexual discrimination is known results in the gender pay gap, which is also a serious problem. And then I go back and give an example of the gender pay gap, because I think perhaps most people don't know what that is. So if you don't know what it is, I give an example. Japan has the second worst gap in Asia, and women are paid basically 25% less than men. And this is the effect of a culture that promotes sexual discrimination, where there are stereotypes and in culture, and that promotion of sexual discrimination, the result is women get paid less. That's a tough statement. That said is the next transition word. It's in yellow. That said, on the other hand, you might not agree with me, but both these topics, sexual discrimination and the gender gap, are different, but they should both be included in our discussion of working rights. And working rights is equal pay for equal work. So in conclusion, the dark blue transition word, it says, here's the end of my ideas. I repeat the same thing. When we talk about equal pay for equal work, we need to talk about sexual discrimination and the gender pay gap. That's all for this week. You can now go to Monologue, have a look at assignment 5, answer the questions and submit them before next class. Thank you very much. Have a nice week.